and welcome to the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday the 20th of April 2022. Nice to have fellow councillors, staff with us this morning, and anyone that's live streaming, welcome. I'd like to now open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer and a few words in relation to council support for Denim Day today. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And Lord, we pray that those people who have suffered at the hands of sexual assault today, throughout this week and next week, and throughout the month of April, you will you will encourage everybody to think of them, and for those survivors and those who haven't survived and their families, we pray for them, Lord, that they can find peace, and that we can see in time to come a generational change that will give rise to the end of sexual assault in our communities across the world. In Lord Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'd just like to add a few words in relation to that. And I'd like to congratulate council and staff and councillors, everyone's got their denim on today, on supporting Centre Care throughout the course of this month. And I know this weekend they've got events. And councillors today, we are expressing our support for Centre Care locally, who are working to support Denim Day and Denim Month this month in relation to sexual assault. And so congratulations everyone for doing that, and council for doing that. It's a wonderful initiative. Denim Day, of course, began in Italy in 1992 when an 18-year-old girl was raped by a 45-year-old driving instructor who was taking her to her very first driving lesson. He took her to an isolated road, pulled her out of the car, removed her jeans and forcefully raped her. For some years now, for over 2 decades, Peace Over Violence has run an inspiring and powerful opportunity to practice solidarity and support survivors by renewing our commitment to exposing harmful behaviours and attitudes surrounding sexual violence. Denim Day is a campaign in April in honour of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. The campaign began after that ruling by the Italian Supreme Court, where the rape victim was overturned because justices felt that since the victim was wearing tight jeans, she must have helped the person who raped her remove her jeans, thereby implying consent. The following day, the women in the Italian Parliament came to work wearing jeans in solidarity with the victim. Peace Over Violence developed the Denim Day campaign in response to this case and the activism surrounding it. Since then, what started as a local campaign to bring awareness to victim blaming and destructive myths that surround sexual violence has grown into a movement. Denim Day asks community and members, elected officials, businesses and students to make a social statement with their fashion statement by wearing jeans as a visible means of protest against the misconceptions that surround sexual violence. And of course, this isn't just isolated to overseas, it is all too common in our own country in Australia, and we have seen similar cases of that happen in our own backyard in Australia. And of course we have, our region is not immune to sexual assault. And can I say to men out there, men of all ages, no means no. There is no excuse for sexual assault, none whatsoever. And we as men, particularly men, it's not always men, but we as men of all ages need to step up and make sure that we make a stand alongside the women of our communities in saying that sexual violence, sexual assault is never acceptable and never will be. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll move now on to leave of absence. I think we've got Councillor Jones away, but he is on live streaming, Mr. CEO, so we have everyone in attendance. Councillor Duff, would you recognise our traditional owners? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Okay, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest today, councillors? We've all got the agenda in front of us. Okay. If anything comes to mind throughout the meeting, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, we'll move on. 5.1, the minutes of the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting held on the 16th of March. They're at page 5 on the agenda. It's recommended that these minutes be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thanks. Seconded by Councillor Potter. Any questions or concerns in relation to the contents? No, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6, business arising from those minutes. Is there any business arising? No? No lights? Okay, good. 7.1 is notice of motion, councillor volunteer policy at 17. Mr. CEO, would you be so kind as to give us a quick overview of the notice of motion, or do you want to go straight? Should we go straight to the councillor?
Oh, thanks, Mayor. It's the councillor's notice of motion. My only commentary is probably on the first two, but if we go in sequence, is that if council develops another policy on that, it's another set of guidelines and framework that councillors have to adhere to. And if they step outside the policy, then we start to get into that whole mucky area. We actually already have a system without a policy where we have a form for everything, where we fill in a form. It allows for volunteering, certainly at the VIX, and Councillor Shoemaker has done it previously. Councillor Duff and now yourself, Mayor, have all, I think, filled in the form and it's been submitted. So there is a process, I'll call it a process, and form to fill in. The inductions are there's several important bits to it. The form, this workplace health and safety inductions. We can easily develop up another policy, but that's the only question I would ask, and it's a question rather than a statement, is do we need another policy or do we just allow that flexibility? Councillors can fill in the form. Questions come, and if I can preempt a question about can I mow a lawn or a park or an aerodrome or something like that, we do have volunteers that move in, and not only this council but other councils. One council I worked for, we had a wonderful gentleman who was a mad aviator who mowed a fairly significant section of an aerodrome for us. We do have community groups mowing, if I can use Wandai, they do an excellent job. We supply the equipment, they fill in their forms, they get their inductions. The process works very well. The workplace health and safety induction is absolutely pivotal for the protection of the volunteers as well as ourselves for insurance coverage. So there's an insurance process that sits behind it. And really appreciate the intent of the notice, but I'm just wondering, do we need another policy, because it actually already is a system that works, and if there's any issues or lumps or bumps in it as people go through it, would love to hear it so we can iron them out. But in council's hands, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. In light of our CEO's comments, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just happy to not have a policy, but I just thought it was a good catalyst to actually get councillors more engaged in the community, because I actually did the induction course and the workplace health and safety part of it, and it was then worked in the Visitor Information Centre. And I just think that it's a great way for councillors to show leadership and to also encourage volunteers. And I'd also love to be able to get involved in the mowing and whippersnipping and things like that, because I sometimes think that if we, there's just some areas that just, if councillors could help out with the staff and just help with the whole aesthetics of our region, it would just create sort of like a we're all in this together atmosphere. So just happy to tweak it or just note it if we don't. I agree, probably don't want a policy. It's just more about getting councillors enthusiastic about stepping up, and perhaps particularly in the Visitor Information Centres, like it was a great experience. And it's a real eye-opener to see. I was surprised on that Sunday when I worked in the Visitor Information Centre as part of the markets, how many people came in. There was at least 14 people came in that short period that I was there, from 10 till 12, all interested in finding more out about our region. So it was that Visitor Information Centre in Murgott hasn't been opened on that Sunday for a very, very long time. So it was a good opportunity to be part of that market atmosphere, but also to do something for our visitor information centres. So yeah, just wanted to flag it, whether we just wanted to I don't know where to from here as far as developing a policy, but just whether to just put something that council supports and endorses councillors to be registered as volunteers, just tweak it and just to make a statement that we're keen to participate and be part of volunteering across our region.
Thoughts, Mr. CEO?
Well, Mayor, can I blur then 7.2 into this before the councillor leaps to her feet and a fit of enthusiasm? Having a think about 7.2. Bree, have you got that? And apologies for the lateness of this, but I've been coming around and given other issues with regard to, because the two of them are sort of intertwined, a little bit different, but they both have the same sort of similar intent, I think. When I went back to, following the other month and when this was brought forward, I went back and I've combed around having a look at other councils' community engagement policies. And when we went through last August, we pretty much stripped the policy back because we had the strategy in place. So what we've done is I've gone through, and this is the best one I've found so far, and particularly it sort of picks up with the why I'm blurring the two together is 7.1. I'll go the difficult part. The practicality of inviting every one of us to every meeting, it just stuff gets missed. People won't get invited. There won't be initially every single meeting that happens, whether it's appropriate. I think councillors as well as, and I'll speak for senior staff, there are times when people want to meet individually. I've had several meetings just recently with the Bacon Fest committee, with 2 representatives on the Bacon Fest committee. It's to collect information that will come back to a report next month to council. Was it appropriate to invite the councillor? Probably not, because it was just pure mechanics. The report will come back to council, so there will be nothing that was discussed. It wasn't. But picking up that and then also going back and having a look at statutory policy 050, I was, again, council direction and looking for the discussion is that the committee, rather than just say, oh, we amend the policies, is to flesh a little bones about it, but also put in that statement. Now, I've pulled this directly from another council's policy. I will acknowledge that, and I thank them for sharing without realising it. But the intent is picking up on the conversations we've had before. Councillors play an important role in representing, and Mayor, you mentioned the other day that councillors as representative of the community. Councillors play an important role in representing the interests of residents and ratepayers and community organisation, providing community leadership guidance and facilitating communication between community and council is a councillor's core role. Some of the way the councils may be A, B, C, D. When working together, councillor staffs, and it's about the cricket team and working together. And so rather than having this as bumping heads and people not working together, when working together, we inform all relevant councillors, be they divisional, portfolio, have an interest. It really shouldn't matter. It's all relevant councillors of community engagements, initiatives of interest, opportunities that may exist through councillors' wealth of information about community they represent, because you guys are a bastion of knowledge that sometimes goes untapped, and so it needs to be brought into the process. Establish policy procedures governing interaction between council and staff, and the appropriateness of undertaking engagement initiatives while observing pre-election caretaker period. And the last 2 are just normal statutory. What I'm suggesting is that rather than just a blatant statement, oh, we amended, and then we spend a period of time working out, have we captured what the intent is, we pick up something like this, drop it into the policy, circulate the policy for the month, get everyone to give feedback, and then bring it back to the June ordinary. And then this can be tweaked certainly with I think where the councillor's direction is, and not just Councillor Duff, but all councillors. It's not exactly right, and it's not, the wording's not exactly right. As I said, it's a direct lift out of someone, but I think particularly that top point, and when you look at 7.1, councillors play an important role. And yes, when the naysayers say, oh, you get paid for it, but every council I've ever worked with has committed a whole swag of their time volunteering, and the remuneration and the time doesn't cover anywhere near the time that's invested in the community and community organisation, community events that people do. And I think it would, well, anyway, my opinion, and certainly, Mayor, then I'll hop out of the way, but it would certainly be good to have a statement of intent like that in the policy about the councillor's role in the community engagement, as well as then broadening it out that councillors and staff working together and inviting councillors to the events or certain functions. Anyway, thought, Mayor, about how to move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. In light of your comments there and this proposal presented on screen there, if we just scroll down there, Bree, Councillor Justice put this forward as a proposal. When working together, councillors and staff should consider, perhaps we could put in there opportunities. We could put something in there along the lines. You don't have to type it in now, Bree, but we could build in the opportunities to provide service to community through volunteer, in accordance with council's procedures and guidelines or something of that nature, Mr. CEO.
Yeah,
is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, certainly, Mayor. And as I said, and this is just literally, this was I've been plugging away at this in spare time, as the old joke goes. But thinking about how best that we can actually end up with a result that captures, hopefully, and again, Councillor Duff, certainly take your captures the council's intent of being engaged in these processes, as well as allowing a functional policy and practice that actually works, so that we're not bumping heads again by accident because I thought you meant this and I didn't invite you to that. And so if we circulate it, then we can use this as a core and tweak it to our needs and certainly add that line about volunteering into it.
Mr. CEO, I'll go to Councillor Duff shortly in relation to her motion 7.1 and thoughts in relation to folding in opportunities for councillors and staff to engage with community through as a council volunteer into this policy here, the engagement policy. But just one observation before that is where we talk about informing all relevant councillors. Maybe perhaps we need to take the word relevant out and all councillors, because we just don't know where we're going to go with portfolios into the future. And it may be that all councillors would like to, or some other councillors may have a knowledge or contribution they'd like to make where the staff may not be aware of that. So just wanted to point that out. Councillor Duff, your thoughts, it's your motion, 7.1, your thoughts on actually to get some formal acknowledgement of the opportunities to volunteer and encouragement to doing so. Your thoughts on building that into this engagement policy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to have that put into the engagement policy, and I agree with you, all councillors, rather than just picking and choosing portfolio holders and divisional councillors. I think all councillors, if we're all able to all know that there's meetings happening, well then anyone who wants to come along can be part of that. Absolutely, 100%, and agree with the intent of what you've suggested and putting that into the community engagement policy. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further comments before we move on? So that being the case, Councillor, you're happy if we move on from 7.1? We look to blend that into 7.2.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's move on to 7.2 then, if we can, Mr. CEO.
Mayor, we'll just make a notation on 7.1 that it'll just literally be resolved. 7.1 was dealt with as a part of 7.2, so there's just a record in the minutes then.
Yes, thank you, Mr. CEO. Thanks, Bree. Okay, so let's go on to 7.2. I think CEO's provided a very comprehensive overview of what he's recommending there. So we do have a previous motion, but the other opportunity is to have the motion that recommends to Council that the following amendment be added to the Council's community engagement policy. Draft be circulated for comment through Council's governance process and be brought to the May ordinary meeting of Council for final consideration. There, that will then give the opportunity to then build into that statement, that policy statement, your intent around actively encouraging staff and councillors to act as volunteers through Council, Councillor Duff, or certainly councillors. And then also to make relevant changes that Council sees appropriate to that policy. So I might just go around the table again. Thoughts on that? Further thoughts before we formalise this? Councillor Duff?
I'm just wanting to hopefully put something about the volunteer in the actual motion so that it's not lost.
Okay. Your thoughts, Mr. CEO? In the second part there where we've got when working together, councillors and staff should consider.
Oh, Mayor, I'd probably, but anyway, just for my thoughts, straight off cuff, is I'd drop it as part of E, as part 1, which talks about the councillor's role in representing on committees or working groups. If we added in an E, for the sake of the discussion today, is encouraging and acknowledging councillors' volunteering roles within the community, and then we can play with it as we circulate it through the governance process. As I said, Mayor, I acknowledge the wording in this isn't quite there, but it between the collective minds of what we're aiming at. And the other thing, I probably should want to just reiterate it so that I'm clear. There will be times when there will be meetings held where there won't be a broad scale invitation sent out. There are those occasions where there are meetings between staff and members of the public, community groups or committees where it's, I won't say not appropriate, but yeah, there will be those occasions. It won't be every meeting every time. It'll be certainly looking for the opportunity to engage and get it out and get everything out there we can. And this policy will give a clear framework. So if we're meeting with a community group, and I think Councillor, one of the ones that's gone through the meeting, I believe you guys went out and met PCYC, so we're meeting with PCYC on site. Yep, boom, meeting with PCYC on site. But the one I was using with the example of the Bacon Fest, where the committee just wanted to come in, hand over some information for a preparation of a council report, I wouldn't send that out as a broad scale email or invitation, because it was just a working group for me to get information to build a report. I know that's sort of a delineation, but that's the sort of stuff, as this thing comes back, is to make sure that we've got clear that we're not tripping over each other, because we just don't need the aggravation or the angst in that not conflict, but that misunderstanding.
Behaviour in relation to Bacon Fest, would it be the case that some councillors were invited, not others, or is it simply a meeting between you and your staff and the committee in that as an example only?
A good example, Mayor, as in that was just a simple meeting between myself. I pulled in a couple of staff members for one. General Manager May deputised for one because I was away, and it was just a collection of information talking about what their needs are. We were speaking to them about some assistance or getting some understanding for them about the mandates and what that meant to them. That's now been cleared up, so the Bacon Fest will go ahead because they would have been a green tick event only. So it was that information exchange, and very practical, as I said, in building a report. So they've put in a list of what they would like for in-kind support that sits outside the policy. So that'll come back to council now, and so all the information gained through those conversations. So no councillor was invited, not for any reason that they couldn't be there, but it was just, I won't say a waste of time, but it was just literally just a working together to build a report to bring back to council.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. That clarifies such. Okay. Any further comments, feedback in
Mr.
relation?
Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, through you to the CEO. So, in regards to the volunteering parks and gardens, for an example, and all that, is that not currently able to be done, Mark, as just a normal, like, can you go and help a community organisation? I've helped put posts and rail, all that sort of stuff up in the past. Is that not covered already, or is that something that we need to address? And just on that, council staff are to ensure that all divisional councillors, portfolio councillors and all that sort of stuff, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I just think that's a bit unfair to expect the staff when we're not even doing that in the chamber. We're not even doing that amongst ourselves, so that needs to be sorted out, and I'm sure you'll be able to address that somehow, Mr. CEO, in your proposal that you send out to us to have a read and make comments on. So yeah, just on that volunteering in the community, I thought that we've covered in that already. So I might be wrong on that.
We'll go to Mr. CEO in relation to the volunteering element. What's being proposed here, Councillor Jones, in relation to councillors, in relation to informing all councillors of community engagement? And I acknowledge what you're saying, that there is certainly some significant gaps there in terms of informing each other. When working together, councillors and staff should consider. So to my mind, what this proposal does is actually acknowledges that not just staff, but councillors we should also consider informing all councillors of community engagement initiatives of interest. So that it would apply equally to us as it would to staff as framed up there. That would be my reading of it anyway as such, but happy to perhaps provide more clarification on that, Mr CEO, as well as the volunteer question. Thank you.
Oh, Mayor, unless councillors were excluded from the policy, it would apply to representatives of council, be it volunteers, councillors, staff. You can exclude councillors if you wish, but borrowing the other policy, when working together, councillors and staff should consider. That's how I would interpret it. And again, and this is why it would be good to circulate it for the month to clear any bugs out of it. The volunteering, councillors are covered by insurance in the normal run of their mill, and if I can use it, I've got on my register, not that I'm an executive holder, but I am a member of Rotary. So when I attend a Rotary function, if I'm digging a fence post, which wouldn't happen, but anyway, when I'm doing a barbecue or doing something on behalf of Rotary, I sign my little form for Rotary and I'm covered by Rotary insurance. When I'm attending volunteering my time with council at the barbecues that we've been having, and I'm cooking a sausage, well, I'm covered by council insurance. So and that's why the inductions and the process is so important, to get people under that insurance policy. So it would be, so if I'm out and if I'll just pick an example, if it's Park X and councillor volunteered to lay a rock garden on Saturday. Now I'm a bit like the GST cake, I'm just thinking of examples, but if they're inducted into the site and mowing the Wandai Aerodrome, if the council went out there with the community group and was volunteering and they were there as a councillor on councillor time, volunteering their time, we would look to have their paperwork and or induction done site specific, as well as councillors' normal insurance. So it's all about the forms and it's all about the insurance. And then what you're doing, if I'm out at the Wandai Aerodrome mowing the aerodrome with the committee as a member of Rotary, it's a Rotary organised action, and then I fall under the Rotary insurance. I know it gets a bit mucky depending on which community group you're representing, but that's why it's all good until it goes wrong, and that's why we need the paperwork.
Just with what, we'll come back to you shortly, Councillor Jones, with what Bree's got there on the screen, Mr CEO, at point E, as you were saying before, could we flesh that out a little bit more to acknowledge, to highlight that in the context of encouraging and acknowledging councillors' role in volunteering in accordance with whatever council's policies or processes are for as you've just highlighted there, in accordance with council's process. Tidy that up later. Yeah. Back to you, Councillor Jones, and then we'll go to Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, through you. Just a question for Councillor Duff, I guess. So the aim of the volunteering and all that is to help and be able to volunteer with community groups, not to go and work with council staff. Would that be right? Or what's your intention of the motion with the volunteering for parks and gardens? Like, for an example, use parks and gardens there.
Well, I think it'd be more to work with community groups. I mean, even with the one for when I did the volunteering at the Visitor Information Centre, it was actually the Show Society were running that markets, and they suggested that it'd be good to have the Visitor Information Centre open. And I guess it'd be more with community groups because like when Highsville were getting ready for that Christmas fair, there was a fair bit of whippersnipping and mowing that needed to be done in that park. And it'd be just good. Council staff were not able to get there, but they wanted it tidied up. It'd be good if, I could have jumped in and helped in that situation.
Yep.
Councillor Shoemaker.
So is it worthwhile?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Councillor Jones, yeah, continue. Sorry.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering whether or not it's... anyway, it's open for comments anyway when Mark sends it out for us to have a look at it in a month, in the next month, so we can make comments and changes there. So I'm happy with that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Schumacher.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support the recommendation here that the CEO's provided. I just had a couple of questions. I did do a little bit of research and I did actually reach out to the Lgaq for a bit of advice in regards to this one. It's my understanding, as per the Local Government Act and the relevant regulations, that councillors and mayors are not involved in the day-to-day operations of council, such as routine maintenance and scheduling. It's the responsibility of the CEO to manage council's operational activities. And I guess some of my thinking around this motion and this discussion, I definitely fully support volunteering and have spent some time in both the Nanango and Kingaroy Visitor Information Centres. And to be honest, with our busy schedules that are full most weeks, it's actually hard to maintain a routine volunteering slot each month. I have actually really struggled with that, I'm going to admit it. There's been times when I had hoped to be there and then it's been blocked out of the calendar because of other events. I know this week I'm going to help out with the Spirit of the Bush and I feel really awful that I'm going to be a little bit late because there's been another important meeting piled into your calendar that you have to attend. So I guess my questions and my thinking through some of this was really around as councillors, volunteering. Sorry, Councillor Jones, your dog is barking.
Councillor Jones, could you just put that on mute for us? Thank you.
Are we volunteering as a resident, or are we volunteering in our role and in our capacity as a councillor? Because I think they're two different things. And the reason why I asked this question, CEO Mark, is because I'm really mindful that as per the Act and the regulation, that as councillors we have to be really careful not to influence a decision before council or receive more information than other councillors may, or provide a direction to a staff member. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned about activities like going out and supporting with operational activities of council. I fully support supporting community groups or actual programs where we've encouraged volunteers to come together. I know we've talked about through the advisory group that you're heading up, Councillor Duff, your group of local people who have a passion for plants and providing advice to council around plantings and these sorts of things, that programs or activities may fall out of that councillors certainly would love to be involved in. But in terms of the day-to-day operations, I guess I'm just trying to understand how it may be perceived and the risk for councillors if we go and volunteer. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to go out and prune the roses and help with the whippersnipping. I'm actually pretty good on a whippersnipper. But if I go out with the crew and do some of that work and I make comment that's taken or thought to be a direction or thought to influence a decision, how does that position me? Like, what protections are in place for both councillors and council staff when it comes to actually councillors volunteering in operational day-to-day activities? CEO Mark.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Yeah, they're good points, Councillor, and I suppose if I can go just to the broad umbrella first, I didn't envisage either from, and again, Councillor Duff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly from the conversations that we've had and the examples the council has raised in the past, there's been engagements with more so community committees where the councillor hasn't been invited to or felt that she should have been invited to. Now, again, we can argue the toss all day whether should, shouldn't, whether it was a mistake, whether it wasn't a mistake. But okay, so if that's the case, in my, and again, why having something down and then putting it through a governance process, I did not expect anyone to turn nor would I expect, looking for the right language, but would I expect someone to turn up at the depot at 6 o'clock in the morning in their work gear to go out with the Parks and Gardens crew or the road crew or hop on the grader or the tractor. It's not meant for that. What it is, as I said, and having a look at what other councils were doing, and there's a few that sort of go this way and a few that don't, few others that don't. But having that, and the reason I like this one when I saw it was it broke the two bits. It acknowledges the council's very important role as that community face, and then when working together, it breaks up the other bit. All the normal rules and policy procedures still apply. So and it's not on today's agenda, but there's a conversation coming about, we've got the acceptable request guidelines, we've got code of conducts, we've got all those things. Your point's well made in the regard that a councillor always in these interactions, and it goes both ways, but that where that line, where the relationship may become not too familiar, but people build relationships within organisations of a whole range of things. Where is that line? Where's that delineation? And I always talk about the old spirit of the Act and the intent of the Act. The intent of the Act has always been, and the spirit of the Act is very much always been, the council is the board and sets the tone of the organisation as the board and has had that very strategic role, and the operational arm is the staffing arm that then implements those policies or directions. All those normal rules apply, and it's something that we continue to work through. But yeah, if in my thinking, and again, happy to have others, but certainly it wasn't that you fill in a form and that allows you to go down to the depot on Friday morning and hop on a grader. That's, yeah, and I don't think we want to go there. But certainly, if I can, the Wandai Aerodrome and the guys do it, the committee and the group that looks after the Wandai Aerodrome do a great job. Is if their working bureau council wants to volunteer and help do something, and certainly the Arbor Days and the tree planting and all that sort of thing is, I suppose I had my head a little bit in that regulatory framework is, if a councillor is going to get involved in those activities, how do we ensure that they're adequately covered so that they don't A, trip over something that they shouldn't, and B, that their insurance coverage is in place. And yeah, if people can amend this into something better, well, yeah, happy, very, very, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for the clarity. No further questions.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. That's touched on many subjects, but there's just one that I'd like to bring forward. We will be expected, and we're all happy to do it at this point in time, but we will be expected to volunteer here and volunteer there. I guess the question, and we've tiptoed around it, when we volunteer and go to these communities and organisations, how do we then stand down the track with perceived or declarable conflict of interest? Because even though that we're a volunteer, there is the door there that will creep open that there will be a perceived conflict of interest with some of these things that we go and do. Because if that community organisation comes back to council and wants community grants or funding or something, and councillors have been involved, whether it be once or regularly within that committee or organisation, and they want something, how do we then sit? I know we will declare or mention that it's a perceived or declarable conflict of interest, but it really does open a can of worms.
Yeah, I might just look to clarify that, and I think Mr CEO can probably add more detail. When it comes to conflict of interest, it's quite prescriptive. The legislation is quite prescriptive. There are two elements to conflict of interest, one being declarable and one being prescribed. So where one, for example, is a volunteer member of an organisation but doesn't hold a position as an office holder, commonly known in the community as an executive member, then that clearly, the legislation says, does not give rise to a conflict of interest. I would have thought that if you are working as a volunteer and helping a community group, albeit on a regular basis, and in the absence of a close personal relationship with any members of that community group, that there is no conflict of interest, that it's not, and it would not be captured by the legislation. It would be treated as any member of any organisation. So where CEO Mark goes and cooks the barbecue for the Rotary, he's a member of Rotary, he's not an office holder, there is no declarable conflict of interest. In fact, he doesn't even have to declare that. He can choose to, but he doesn't have to under the legislation. Similarly, if I was to go and work as a volunteer for a local community group on a regular basis, week in, week out, it might be at the local footy club or somewhere, that doesn't give rise to being a conflict of interest simply because I'm acting as a volunteer. So I think we need to be clear about the fact that the legislation does, I believe, cover that quite adequately. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything further?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And when we bring the report back, we can do. But state's been moving to clarify the not-for-profits even more so because of these exact. It's a good question, and your explanation's exactly correct. And I'll dig up because I think even now they've double-checked, but even where donations, raffles, that sort of things, that they've been clarifying that more and more, that the not-for-profits are not. Yes, certainly if you're the president of XYZ, absolutely, because you have a fiduciary responsibility to that organisation, but as a member or participant, it's not a direct conflict.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Yeah. Okay, further comments? Otherwise, we'll look to get this one out for debate. The committee recommends to Council that the following amendment be added to the South Bennett Regional Council Community Engagement Policy Statutory 050. The draft be circulated for comment through Council's governance process and be brought to the May ordinary meeting of Council for final consideration. And those amendments are as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconder. Councillor Potter. Further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.3, notice of motion donating replaced mowers to community groups at page 19. This one's mine, Mr. CEO, so I'll take the lead if you're comfortable with me doing so. I'll put forward a motion that the committee recommends to Council that the mowers being replaced to the 21-22 budget be offered by way of donation to local community groups that are an incorporated association located within the South Bennett LGA and provide a local community benefit through an expression of interest with priority given to those groups maintaining or offering to maintain a council or council-controlled land asset. Do we have a move for such? I'm sorry, do we have a second for motion? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. I'll now speak to the motion. So I did receive, thank you, General Manager Jarvis, a report from our fleet team in relation to a request for information as to the mowers that were going to be replaced in the 21-22 budget. They have been ordered, and I think in some cases we're waiting on delivery. But from the RFI they submitted, there are 6 mowers, as stated there. 1 John Deere front deck, 2 Iseki 0 turns, and 3 Iseki front deck mowers. These mowers would sell at auction for between $3,500 to $6,000. And donating them would have a small impact on the sale of fleet recovery. The recipients, in taking ownership of the mowers, would need to arrange their own insurance and cover all ongoing costs as they would for any other assets that they had. Council would effectively dispose of the asset by way of gift to the successful applicants under the motion. So the intent here is to provide a benefit to our local community. Yes, there's a cost to that in terms of the capital loss that we would take, which would be somewhere between 6 by 3.5, which is $21,000 and $36,000 in capital loss to council should we choose to donate them as against selling them. So I'd commend the motion to the committee. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely agree, and thank you for bringing the motion forward. I think it's a great outcome. I just wanted to check in terms of the reasonable working condition of the mowers, just making sure that they're all actually maintained to date and that we're not handing a headache to a community group, that they'll actually get some life out of these mowers moving forward.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Councillor. That's a good question because the supervisor of my plant and fleet, they're ensuring that every lawnmower we hand over will be serviced and ready for handover prior to that to the community organisation. those zero turns and that there too, they're very operationally. I do sort of, I just do hope that the volunteers have the capacity to use those mowers, but from a mechanical point of view, yes, that they will be serviced and handed over. And because they're serviced regularly in that they're in very, very good condition.
Yeah, thank you. No further questions. I absolutely think this is a great opportunity to help out those community organisations that are helping our region by mowing and maintaining different parcels of land across the South Burnett. So thank you for bringing it forward. I'm support of the motion.
Further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I 100% support it. I just think it to empower our volunteers, and I know there's been a lot of requests over the years from mowers, so keen to support this motion, and yeah, hopefully we'll when they get the mowers, they'll be more enthusiastic than ever to support our council team. So thank you.
Okay. No further speakers. We'll conclude the debate. Sorry,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Sorry, I just wanting to know whether or not you'd be interested in putting those comments around that you said that they'd have to take out their own insurance and pay ongoing costs into the recommendation.
Yeah,
Would you consider
happy.
that in?
Yeah, happy to do so. Just for clarity, I mean, the transfer of the asset would give rise to that responsibility naturally falling with them at law anyway. But yeah, for clarity, I think you make a good point. Bree, can we just add in there at the end, probably at the very end after we say land asset, priority given to those groups maintaining or offering to maintain a land asset, and with clarification that responsibility for insurance and all ongoing costs will rest with the recipients taking ownership of the mowers, with the recipient organisations, perhaps. Back to you, Councillor Jones. So you comfortable with that change?
Yeah, no, that just makes it quite clear. It's in black and white, and yeah, no one can come back. All good, happy.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Councillor Shoemaker, are you happy with that change? Okay, so if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're now up to 9.1, which is corporate services, people and culture, communications and media, finance and ICT portfolio report, which is at page 20. Okay, well, thank you for this opportunity. First of all, in corporate services, the Local Government Mutual Services Group incorporates 3 self-insurance schemes of Local Government of Queensland, LGM Liability, LGM Assets and LGW Work Care. The schemes have proven a successful vehicle for mutual ownership and control by local government of our liability, property and workers' compensation exposures, and have ensured cost stability that would not otherwise be achievable. Council departments have, important to note actually, council departments have been assisting corporate services to review insured assets and liability insurance profiles in the completion of the annual insurance scheme questionnaires. The questionnaires are lengthy and detailed, providing corporate service the opportunity to put a filter over our internal processes and insurance coverage, flagging opportunities for review during 22-23 in preparation for the 23-24 insurance coverage discussions with LGMS. Moving on to people and culture, and the 2022 intake of trainees has now been finalised, with 10 fresh new faces around council undertaking traineeships in different disciplines. Council is pleased to support so many local families in offering these traineeships in the region. With COVID-19 now common in the community, South Burnett Regional Council has been impacted significantly over the last month, with many staff required to quarantine or isolate due to testing positive or being a close contact. There doesn't seem to be a break in the number of cases, although from all reports to date, all staff and their families are recovering well with no longer-term side effects at this point. And can we certainly wish everyone who's been affected by COVID a speedy recovery and all the best. Moving on to communications and media. In March 2022, the Media and Comms team progressed the following: 33 media releases, 8 media inquiries, 74 Facebook posts, and 41 Instagram posts, 1 e-news article, 5 printed advertisements, and 48 graphic design publications. A list of all media release inquiries and statistics for March 2022 is available as an attachment to this report. Can I just add a sincere thank you, sincere welcome, and thank you to our new Media and Communications Officer, Joanne, who is in our gallery today. Joanne, it's wonderful to have you on board, and it's been great having you in the short period of time, been great having you here supporting our council, myself and fellow councillors in our media and community engagement. Thank you very much. Finance, at the end of March 2022, Council had $51.311 million in cash and cash equivalents, with the majority of this balance sitting with Queensland Treasury Corporation, QTC. The third quarter forecast is currently being reviewed and will be provided to Council in the monthly meeting reports on the 27th of April 2022. A discount of $2.1 million was taken up by property owners during the January to June rate levy, which equaled to roughly 81% of property owners. The Chief Executive Officer allowed an extension of discount to approximately 15 property owners during March due to exceptional circumstances. At the end of March 2022, approximately $8.4 million in rates still outstanding, with the first reminder notices having been sent out to overdue accounts. Thank you to the finance team for the great work you've been doing throughout the course of recent months, as always, and with the additional load of working with Council to prepare the budget for the organisation. You're doing a sterling job. Thank you for your leadership, General Manager Jarvis. So with that, I would now like to move that my report be received. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Okay, any speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.2, South Burnett Regional Council, Division 1 by-election at 25. Thank you, Mr CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. This was resolved at a previous meeting that report be brought back as soon as possible, and we're quite bound by legislation in this area. Council resigned as of the March ordinary meeting. We have only 8 weeks under the Act to actually conduct the by-election, and I'll use the word must. We must use the Electoral Commission of Queensland. So our choice is we would do it within the 8 weeks, and we'd be using the Electoral Commission of Queensland. We have actually no real active involvement anymore in the election process once we hand it over to ECQ. And so it's really just an information report. The reason that the other reason that we had to move so quickly is a federal election. If we went for one of the May dates, and this was in consultation with ECQ, if we had ended up on the federal election date, our by-election would be bumped as the federal election takes preference. So that would cause no end of consternation as to issues with conducting a by-election if we had to move the date once it was set. So 30th of April is the day. The community will make its decisions. Last day, the significant dates are there. The last day, postal ballots, any postal ballots must be received by 5 p.m. on the 10th of May. That would be, I would be expecting, we would have a declaration at some point, and then there would be a swearing in. So certainly by the May ordinary meeting, we would expect to have a divisional councillor in place at the absolute latest, and yeah, we'll just work with the Electoral Commission as far as organising the dates for the swearing-in process and in consultation with you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any questions in relation to that? Councillor Potter.
Sorry, just with regards to the spelling of Councillor Ros Frolov, they've actually got an S instead of a Z.
Thanks, Councillor. I don't know how that's, most sincere apologies. It snuck in somewhere once else too. So, most sincere apologies. Thank you.
Okay. So it's recommended that the report be noted for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second Councillor Henson. Further speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.3, confirming attendance at the 126th Local Government Association Queensland LGAQ Annual Conference in Cairns, 17 to 19 October 2022, and LGAQ Civic Leaders Summit 29 to 30 June 2022 at page 26. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. This was asked to be brought back in April. We've done ELGA. We've got Council's engagement with the LGAQ Bush Conference, which is in July. It was a COVID postponed or cancelled event last year, so everything from last year has been rolled over into this year for the Bush Conference, so that one's tick. So we've got just LGAQ Conference as delegates, the councillors and attend as observers. Last year, which was probably the first time I've seen it I think ever when I've been at LGAQ, they actually stuck on their digs as to who carried, and I think we did it and we spoke about it in the follow-up report. The only person allowed to speak to the resolutions was the one carrying the voting stick. So if you allocated the 2 ballots to the one person, well, no other councillor could speak. And as that, I can't recall another time where they've been that strict on that protocol. So it's suggested that if the 2 councillors who attend as the delegates each be allocated 1 vote, so then we can have 2 people speaking off the floor of the conference. Civic Leaders is coming up. And again, actually, they're getting out there a little bit this year, LGAQ. It has been traditionally every 2 years, Civic Leaders, in the past, the format's been a finance summit, Civic Leaders, it's been Mayor, Deputy Mayor, CEO. It's exceptionally well attended and it's very well worth going to as far as the conversation. LGAQ's reached out to Councillor Shoemaker and myself as far as would we be happy to be on the panel, which would be absolutely honoured. And I believe Councillor Shoemaker, you've accepted as well. So, Mayor, it's just to set the delegates and the observers. And if I can throw my 20 cents in with my, certainly this year, I would be appreciative of attending the LGAQ State Conference as an observer and definitely attending the Civic Leaders.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Okay, so we'll have a discussion around this one before we obviously get any motion forward. Okay, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly got a lot out of the LGAQ annual conference last year, and I really do think it's important that all of our councillors do get an opportunity to go and represent our council in the motions that we put forward. It was disappointing. I was prepared, worked up the courage to speak to my motion, and unfortunately couldn't because my name had not been nominated as a voting delegate. However, I was very grateful to Mayor Nev Ferrier, who from Banana Shire, who'd partnered in preparing that motion and at very short notice stepped up and spoke for us, and we were very lucky to get the motion across the line. So that was about transitional planning for coal-fired communities like ours, which was really important. And I certainly, with the ALGA conference that I'm already attending this year, don't have an interest, or certainly will already be quite busy this year with conferences and things, so I'm happy not to attend the LGAQ annual conference. However, the LGAQ Civic Leaders Summit, I have been invited to be a part of a young councillors cohort and represent with a panel of 3 councillors under the age of 40 to the Civic Leaders Conference. And I'm actually really excited. I met with a couple of other councillors in Queensland. There's only actually a handful of us under the age of 35. who are councillors in their respective communities. So this is a really exciting opportunity to try to empower, engage and inspire more young people to think about leadership in their local communities. And I'm quite blown away to be asked to be a part of the panel, and excited about the opportunity to bring more young people along for the journey. So I definitely would like to put my name forward for the Civic Leaders Summit. However, the other conferences, I think it would be wonderful to have some of our other councillors attend and represent. Certainly yourself, Mr Mayor. I think it's very important that our Mayor is present for the Lgaq annual conference, as all mayors across the 77 councils of Queensland were there last year. So I think it's important that our Mayor does attend and represent our regions and its interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, fully supportive of Councillor Shoemaker with the summit, and can appreciate Cairns is a long way to go away from your family, but stated previously that LGA conference last year in Mackay was probably one of the most beneficials I'd received in council, and I'm pretty sure Manager Tim Lowe here beside me, we had some very fruitful conversations from a company that had conversations up at that meeting, and I'd like to think we're still in conversation with them over some of the issues we've got within South Burnett Council and some of our water issues. So that was an extremely fruitful thing for myself, and certainly can appreciate, would love to see Councillor Shoemaker at the summit, and fully supportive of our councillors attending the Cairns one in October. So I think it's one of the best things that local councils can attend. It was seriously beneficial last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Further speakers? Okay. Mr CEO, just in relation to the summit, could you perhaps just give us a little bit more detail around what happens at these summits? It's civic leaders, so are there people from other civic organisations that attend, or is it only from councils, and what sort of activities and matters are addressed?
Okay, thanks, Mayor. As timely, the program only just came out literally yesterday afternoon. So the accommodation and timing, it's predominantly, historically, as I've said, it's been Mayor, Deputy Mayor and CEO only. They've been quite specific about it. It's a very open forum, no media, and there's no external parties bar other government agencies. So there's a lot of very open conversation about the state of the industry and what's going on and what's happening. It's been one of the few that I've seen that at nearly every council, and it was rare of the ones I've been going to since they initiated the civic leaders, that a council wasn't represented in some form. Now, there's always individual circumstances where you have individuals can't make it, but the program pretty much is from advancing our local communities' livability, building on the foundations of livability, build a plan, localised livability, strategy versus operations, seriously social media, about the impact of it on local government now, building a consensus in local decision making, dealing with hostile situations. There's an evening dinner. There's working collaboratively, the importance of effective working congenially, the importance of effective executive relationships. The opposition's leader and generally the member of the government, the minister, attends and does a presentation. Engaging our community's youth, roundtable discussion, workshop on how to engage community's youth. Showcase data is a key to regional and economic development, and then a panel on the lowdown on local government. So it kicks off at 9 a.m. on the first day and concludes by 1 o'clock on the second day. So yeah, it's generally they've been. I can only speak highly of them. The ones I've been to have been excellent.
Mr. CEO, just in terms of the voting at the conference, if the CEO, can the CEO go as a delegate and have a vote? Or was it only elected reps that can be delegates?
I think it's the elected. I'd have to check, Mayor. I would really have to. No one's ever asked me.
No, I was just thinking if you were going. But anyway, I'd probably recommend. Yeah, thank you. I'd probably recommend that in listening to conversation and clarity here today, that Mayor and CEO attend as council delegates to the conference. Are there any other councillors who would like to go along to the conference? Councillor Henshin? Yeah?
Yeah, Cairns, certainly. As I expressed before, the one in Mackay was one of the most beneficial learning experiences I've had, certainly in council. Yeah, I think highly beneficial and would encourage council to consider, as stated back in October, the opportunity to be given to each councillor to attend.
So, Mr. CEO, well, we better to have Mayor and Councillor Henshin attend as the delegates. That way we haven't got any confusion around who can vote and who can't vote. And that, are you looking to attend the conference? Yes, you would. And with the CEO in attendance as well, CEO to attend. Any other councillors that would like to attend?
Well, yes, Mr Mayor, I certainly hope to be there.
And Councillor Jones attend as an observer. Councillor Jones, are you happy with that, or do you want to be the second delegate?
Yeah, well, I'm
Speak
happy
and
with
vote.
whatever, but you would think that your deputy mayor would be the one that you would go with, but I'm happy for you to give it to whoever you want to choose, Mr Mayor.
No, I think you make sense. Mayor and Deputy Mayor attend the conference as delegates, and Councillor Henshin as the observer. That makes more sense, doesn't it?
That's
You
fine
happy
by
with
me,
that,
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Henshin?
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you,
Acceptable.
Councillor Jones. You were just silent there, so I wasn't sure what you thought. But thinking I should have gone to you earlier. My apologies, but yeah, you make a good point. Mayor and Deputy Mayor as delegate, and Councillor Henshin as observer, CEO to attend. Does anyone else want to add any comments to that in terms of number one? Number two,
Mr Mayor,
CEO.
if I could, given we generally need a resolution for attendance, if we could just add on to the and given the Division 1 by-election, the opportunity be offered to the Division 1 candidate who's successful, should they wish to attend, because it would probably be helpful if they're near to local government. That one would be helpful. If they don't or are unable to attend, well, no harm, no foul, but then it just gives us the head of power to offer it, if that's a fair thought.
So, Bree, just where you've got the word "and" after Councillor Henshin, and the Division 1, the newly elected Division 1, and the newly elected Division 1 councillor be provided an opportunity to attend as an observer. And just take CEO Mark Pitt out because he's not a councillor. So just a councillor, and then we might just, after the word observer, just if we could hit enter there, thanks Bree, and then go down and just put a note there, CEO Mark Pitt to attend. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Henshin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to be noted that in the event of going to the Lgaq in Cairns, that I would be doing the same as last year and travelling under my own pretences to get up there. I just want the chambers to be aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Henshin. Duly noted. In terms of the summit, I'll come to Councillor Shoemaker. I'd probably like to recommend there that the Mayor and CEO attend the summit, or that the Mayor and Councillor Shoemaker or Deputy Mayor attend the summit. And that certainly Councillor Shoemaker has got a great opportunity as one of our proud young councillors in Queensland to attend as an observer and speaker. Mr CEO, how would that be? And we'll note that you'd be also attending.
Oh, man, the summit tends not to have delegates. It's really.
I just had the word delegate there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, that's
In the
probably
motion.
Yeah, probably.
So we don't have delegates.
We don't.
So,
have
so what if
delegates,
we were to
just the
say that
attendance.
Mayor and Councillor Shoemaker attend the summit, or Councillor Jones? What are your thoughts, Councillor Jones? Obviously, Councillor Shoemaker has to go anyway. She's been invited by the Lgaq, and we would certainly send her. Did you want to be part of the summit as well?
No, 100% support Councillor Shoemaker. She's got a great opportunity. I'm sure she'll do the South Burnett proud, and I'm happy to see her go there and represent our council.
So if we were to send Mayor and Councillor Shoemaker as delegates with CEO to attend? Yeah. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker, your thoughts? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to go and represent the South Burnett. And I just did want to point out, Councillor Henshin, certainly with my family arrangements, I've always made myself available for every council conference or event, despite the challenges of managing two school-aged children. But I did want to point out with the Lgaq conference, I thought it was a great opportunity to offer it to somebody else, being that council has already nominated for myself to attend the Lgaq conference, which is in the 19th and 22nd of June in Canberra. So that was my reason for not putting myself forward, and certainly recognise the opportunity with the Civic Leaders Summit. So thank you.
Are there any other councillors who'd like to attend the summit as observers? No? No one else? So we won't have anyone additional there. So we might just take that out then, Bree. So we'll put a full stop after the word attend. We're happy to leave delegates there, Mr. CEO, just for want of a better term at this stage, I suppose. Okay, Councillor Potter.
No, it's all good. It's there.
Thank you. Okay, any further speakers on this one? Otherwise, we'll seek a mover for the motion as presented. We have a mover, Councillor Potter. Seconder, Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter. No, you're right. Happy with that? We're happy to go to the vote? No, you're fine. Happy to go to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Congratulations, Councillor Shoemaker, on being selected. A wonderful opportunity. One of the few under 35 councillors. Thank you. We're very proud to see you doing that for our council. Thank you. Okay, so we're up to, what's the time? 10:11 a.m. What time did we resolve we were going to break for morning tea, Mr. CEO? Was it 10:30? Okay, Councillor Hedgel, I should have gone to you first, shouldn't I? So 9.4, administrative amendments to council policy and associated documents - organisational structure change at 28. Mr. CEO, thank you.
Mayor, this is the first of the mechanical resolutions to come through from the change of senior structure, and it's literally to go through the policies without bringing everyone back and just make all the naming protocol amendments.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Does anyone have any questions in relation to the report? If not, we'll just put the recommendation forward. The committee recommends to Council that South Burnett Regional Council endorse the administrative amendments to be made within Council's policy governance framework and associated documents reflective of the change to the organisation structure. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henshin, seconding Councillor Potter. Speakers? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.5 is adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Technology Public Access Policy, Strategic 019 at 30. General Manager Corporate. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this policy was put through the tail end of our old process where it was circulated to councillors and the senior executive or senior management team, and then it also we put it through the new process as well, where we met with Councillor Potter just prior to this committee meeting to have a final discussion around the fundamental changes. Really what you'll see before you is a tidy up of the policy. It was out of date and due for a review, and so we've aligned it to our new template and our new terminology. There's very little fundamental changes. It's just really a tidy up and a freshen up in that context.
Thank you, Manager. So it's recommended that the committee recommends to Council that the South Burnett Regional Council Technology Public Access Policy Strategic 019 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, shall we have a break now? Happy to have a break now. Move that we break for morning tea. Councillor Henshin seconds. You can copy and paste that beforehand, Bree, with Councillor Henshin seconding. Hopefully we're not breaking any rules. Okay, now move that we resume the meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henshin, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we're up to 10.1, and I'd now like to welcome Councillor Shoemaker to present her Regional Development Portfolio Report, which is at page 36.
Thank you, Mayor Otto. The focus for the month has been progressing the scope Council determined for the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund, options analysis. There is an additional report that has been provided in this agenda to discuss the progress to date. However, in progressing this step, I've met with and discussed the demand assessment process with interested stakeholders from across the region. From the work undertaken, we understand that insufficient and uncertain water supply across the region has meant underinvestment by many growers and agricultural businesses. Through phase 2 of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund project, lead consultant KBR has found that future deterioration in water supply due to climate variability will further limit and reduce the region's agricultural competitiveness, economic growth and jobs. The demand assessment is key to demonstrating and persuading all levels of government there is sufficient collective demand and a willingness from growers to take and pay for water. The water market is competitive. Many regions are having similar conversations, and we need growers' support and enthusiasm to inform the demand assessment and validate the potential long-term solutions, water solutions. We are asking growers to complete a non-binding round 1 expression of interest form that will collectively determine there is sufficient demand to progress the options to secure water for blackbutt growers and irrigators, Baramba and Barlil Weirs project, and the conversion of Gordon Brook Dam from urban to agricultural use. Whenever you ask government to invest in a water project, you must be able to demonstrate that agricultural benefits or economic activity is greater than the cost of the project. We're working to demonstrate to both state and federal government that we have a commitment from irrigators. Irrigators have a willingness to purchase the water, and that providing reliable water to the South Burnett stacks up. I've since learned, running concurrently to our demand assessment process over the next 12 to 18 months, Sunwater will be working to develop the Bundaberg and Burnett Regional Water Assessment Program. The Bundaberg-Burnett Regional Water Assessment aims to deliver economic opportunity in the region through investment in water, and our project team will be liaising closely with the team currently undertaking the assessment program. From the information provided, I understand the BBWA will look at the needs and opportunities across the region, not on a project-by-project basis. And certainly in some of the discussions that we've had, it will be very important that South Burnett is at the table with and part of that assessment meeting process, and certainly advocating for our share in this region. This means that all options will be assessed, both individually and together, to determine how the region's water needs can be met. By looking at all projects together, the purpose of the BBWA is to use a common approach to determine need and ability of projects to meet that need. Ultimately, that will inform the state government through the development of a region-wide strategy to create economic opportunity through water. I also recently attended an Ag Force forum in Moffatdale and met with members and non-members from afar to discuss and understand why sustainability matters across the agricultural industry. As you know, agriculture is the second biggest contributor to our economy after mining and energy. In 2015 and 16, the total value of agricultural outputs in South Burnett Regional Council was $192 million. That's from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Value of agricultural commodities produced 15-16. I know we'll have new data with the most recent census soon to be released. The largest commodity produced was livestock slaughterings, which accounted for 70.7% of South Burnett Regional Council's total agricultural output in value terms. It's therefore important for a region like ours to understand the shifting needs of the agricultural industry. We know that water is one of the key components to growth of the industry. However, it was interesting to sit amongst leaders of the industry and discuss how collectively to bring people along for the journey and help to understand and navigate some of the mixed messages and instances where the noisy, ill-informed majority have convinced themselves otherwise about the agricultural industry. Did you know that due to consumer sentiment, meat substitutes are among some of the fastest growing product lines in Australia? Well, we heard from Jason Strong from Meat and Livestock Australia that demand for meat will continue to grow domestically as Australians are a large consumer of protein, estimated to be on average 100 kilograms consumed per person annually. He explained that global demand is set to increase by 5% and shared that as populations increase in their effluence, they tend to feed themselves better. He concluded that beef consumption globally is increasing, as is chicken, whereby consumption has tripled. The session concluded that the more we connect, the bigger the impact the industry will have in building and maintaining trust. A clear outcome for Council to consider in its advocacy is to progress discussions about how we ensure young people who are beginning or interested in the agricultural industry have opportunities to attend ag colleges or appropriate ag training facilities and grow within the industry, particularly in the areas of genetics, production, processing, and the incorporation of ag tech. In closing, I'd like to share with my colleagues that Visit South Burnett is hosting a meet and greet at the Proston Golf Club on Thursday, 21st of April, that's this week. And I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Stacey Perrott and Mark Pitt for the work that's being undertaken to progress the visitor service strategy. There'll be more information shared about this at a later date. So with that, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that my report be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a second? Councillor Henson, thank you. Any speakers? Councillor Jones? You all right? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Councillor Shoemaker. And certainly I'd like to thank Councillor Shoemaker for her work and particularly working with the ag sector. It is an important part of our economy, and your point that instances where the noisy, ill-informed majority convince themselves otherwise about the ag industry is quite disappointing. If you know, it's certainly it's commonly regarded amongst economists, if one watches the narrative around this in the economic circles, that large populations of the world, the Chinas and the Indias and the Southeast Asias, will be moving from construction economies to consumption economies. And that means that they'll be looking to consume higher value food products as well as other materials and products. So, you know, our reliance on our farmers will only increase as an important part of our GDP. And, you know, when the global financial crisis hit in 2008, it was only our ag exports that kept our economy afloat. That's well documented. Government at all levels needs to step up in relation to water, investment incentives, research and development programs and training. I feel on this space, if we are to realise what's a tremendous opportunity at our doorstep, with being so close to some major consumption economies across the world. So thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and we look forward to seeing more work in this space. Yeah. Okay, all right. Any further speakers? Does anyone else want to add to that? Okay, well, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.2 is the Regional Development and Tourism Monthly Update at page 38. Mr CEO, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. If I could just table the report as read, as it's just an update on the activities and the statistics, and if anyone else has questions, or VSB report is attached. But yeah, Mayor, it is as it reads.
Oops, thank you, Mr CEO. So it's recommended that the Regional Development Tourism Monthly Update for March 2022 be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconded, Councillor Potter. We'll go to Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome our new volunteer to the Kingaroy Visitor Information Centre, Gail Maynard, and welcome back volunteers Kay Clark and Janet Firth, which I know play a very valuable role at the Kingaroy Centre. Also great to read that Pam Kerr has stepped up and is running the localised coach tours, and that there's been 3 from the Kingaroy Visitor Information Centre over this last month. It's quite an impressive number of tours that Pam's run. And I just wanted to also acknowledge Eddie Hosok and Mary Pridham, who are our new volunteers at the Kingaroy Museum. So certainly volunteering really is the backbone of those services, and it's great to see people are stepping up and helping out in our local community. I also, just in closing, wanted to acknowledge the work that Melanie has done with VSB over this past 12 months, and certainly wish her very well with her maternity leave. It will be great to have Kate McCormack fill those rather big shoes while she's away. But certainly looking forward to welcoming Mel back and wishing her well with her the arrival of her new little bundle of joy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on page 51, it's about the local markets. I just wanted to flag that Heisel's having their markets again. They're actually running them in Memorial Park. They normally have the markets at the sports ground, but they're experimenting with trialling them at the Memorial Park. So I just wanted to flag that's on this Sunday. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.3 is the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund Phase 2 at page 55 on the agenda. And Mr. CEO, we might allow you and Councillor Shoemaker to lead this one if you could. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Happy to throw to the councillor. The attachment is probably the came through as part of start again. The attachment gives the summary update as to where the progress of the report has come to. The recommendation picks up to continue plugging it along. There's been a fair bit of work done in this space. Certainly picking up from the councillor's report too, we're doing a little bit more information about the Bundaberg-Burnett study, trying to get a bit of an understanding of what's going on there and how that will work and impact. It's a different topic and it'll come back under its own separate report, Mayor, but certainly cognizant of trying to ensure that our work isn't lost and that there is no duplication or limited duplication as far as the two studies. Certainly the recommendation, we note the report and approves the project scope extension under the available funding, and happy to take questions or what the council wishes to speak about.
Mr. Chair, I might go to Councillor Shoemaker now to speak to the report and provide us with the recommendation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we had discussed in this chamber how we would start with the phase 2 of the National Water Infrastructure Development Fund project scope, and at that point in time we made the decision to look at the Barlil and West Baramba Weir project and to do some hydrological modelling for West Baramba Weir, and also to do progress the demand assessment for the entire catchment, which is now well underway. What we are proposing here is to use with the remaining funding to progress the detailed business case funding application. So that would mean taking all of the information that we have gathered around the Barlil and West Baramba Weir project and actually put an application to the federal government for support to prepare the detailed business case for the Barlil Weir and West Baramba Weir, which will be the final step, should we get the funding for that detailed business case, to actually putting shovels in the ground. So very, very, very passionate about progressing that work for that area. The following recommendation relates to the investment decision analysis for Gordon Brook Dam conversion. So what we've done is we've gone out, we've had some conversations in our community, and Tim, probably is good to talk about some of the work that your team's been doing to determine how Gordon Brook Dam basically isn't suitable for urban use into the future. If we can demonstrate that Gordon Brook Dam isn't suitable for urban use into the future, we can then start to have some conversations about converting it to agricultural water, which we've had really good uptake across the region in relation to the conversations about Gordon Brook Dam. The purpose of this part of phase 2 is really to determine what that decision would actually look like for councils. So if we converted the dam to agricultural use, it would inform our decision about that. How would we on-sell the water? What would that system essentially look like? So that's more about doing some of the groundwork and homework for council so that we can inform our approach moving forward with Gordon Brook Dam. And it will complement the work that Tim and his team are already doing, which I think would be good for council to get some understanding of as well, an update on. The following one is the Blackbutt Irrigators projected advancement. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied. And the purpose of that is really around setting up a locally managed entity who would oversee the development of a new irrigation scheme. So we've done the options analysis in Blackbutt. We understand there's pipeline infrastructure there and that there is an opportunity for those irrigators into the future to access that. However, they will need to have a locally formed entity themselves to be able to progress those conversations with government, and council really will become an enabling function in those discussions, in bringing that to fruition. And the project team are pretty confident that with that local entity and the work that we've done, we've got a very good story to share. It absolutely makes sense for the state government to allow blackbutt growers and irrigators to use water off the Wivenhoe or Bundoomba pipeline in Blackbutt. It's just a most process of mapping that out. And the final discussion piece is we've talked a little around the 25-year economic roadmap, and I guess just the discussions around sustainability and the opportunities for our region into the future. And we're just proposing to slightly change the project scope of that one to develop a regional sustainability strategy and opportunity statement to be used for advocacy opportunities. So the purpose of the regional sustainability strategy and opportunity statement is to identify sustainability gaps and opportunities in relation to social, ecological and economic sustainability, identify regional initiatives, programs, policy changes and capital projects that can support driving our region forward, and prepare a regional sustainability strategy and opportunity statement. So that's really more around demonstrating all of the things the South Burnett has to offer and putting that offering and that position forward in terms of gaining longer term support and longer term conversations about that 25-year discussion around water and the diversification of our economy moving forward. So that's the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. The report that the team has prepared is very comprehensive. I've just given you a light summary, but if I think it would be timely if General Manager Tim just gave a bit of an update in terms of some of the work he's doing around Gordon Brook Dam.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Yes. Yeah, over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't got a great deal to elaborate on at this point. We're still in the final stages of the submission for the off-stream storage. As everyone is aware, that and the increased allocation off the Bundoomba pipeline is critical to our way forward in not just the Gordon Brook as an irrigation dam, but the whole South Burnett region. It's really the sticking point. But that's all at this point in time. There's nothing else I can really reveal that it's in progress until we get the final decision from the state.
Yeah, thanks very much, Manager Tim. We'll take that as moved by Councillor Shoemaker. Yes. Do we have a seconder? Yep, Councillor Duff, thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really, really keen to support this. I think that there's a lot of good projects there. I'm really was in the room when there was the Mergen Hall was full of irrigators that are really passionate about progressing the Balliol and West Baramba projects. I've always been a strong advocate to do something with that Gordon Brook Dam for irrigation. I just think that that's the absolute answer to the problems we have around Gordon Brook. Have been having that discussion for a long time with irrigators, so just really keen to get that happening and to progress that as a way forward. Yeah, I think we need to definitely do something with Blackbutt to get better water security and just a better outcome there, and just really keen to or pleased to hear that that 25-year economic strategy will actually deliver hopefully some outcomes for our region along the way, instead of just being a document that will collect dust, but actually that will start to identify the gaps and make a difference. So really keen to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a great report, and thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, for working so hard in this space. I actually just would like to know if, in this report here on page 59, it said that the responses were due back by the 14th of April. I'm just wondering whether we get to see some of those responses that people have put in. Thank you.
Yes, the KBR team are actually just following up with the initial participants in the meetings and anybody who's actually ever had contact with council about the water study to make sure those demand assessments are received. So I guess the 14th of April date was a bit of a, a feeler, something that we were trying to achieve. The real challenge for us and the reason why that Burnett Bundaberg discussion will be very important is because they too will be undertaking a demand assessment across our region, and we really want to make sure the work that we've done will dovetail into the work that they're doing. I know that there are, like Councillor Duff has said, she's been a part of council for a long time and been talking about these projects for a very long time, and I fear that we have a number of irrigators in our region that are currently suffering from fatigue. They're tired. They've lost hope almost around trying to get some of these projects across the line, and to ask them, to go to them and ask them to fill in another form for another business case, which may or may not amount to anything. It was really difficult. I'm really hoping I can see enormous value in the work that former Mayor Campbell and the former council did start with this project. And I think it's just so important that it is a living document. It's not something that sits on a shelf and we say we did that once. It's something that we actually, once these projects are ticked off, we pull it out and have a look again, what's next? Because what we learned through that process is that solving the problems of South Burnett's water issues here in the solving the South Burnett's water challenges for the future really will take a multifaceted approach. So I'm really passionate about progressing these things, but I don't think it stops here by any means. I think there's more work to be done after this, and I know this council's played an incredible role in enabling and supporting the conversation, and it's important that we don't stop there and that we really do advocate for the people of our region, and we do finally, hopefully, see some shovels in the ground because, yeah, irrigator fatigue out there is a real thing, and to really diversify and move our economy into the future, water is the key ingredient. We know there are opportunities, and I guess we need to make sure that the South Burnett has a strong and loud voice at the table with our neighbouring region of Bundaberg, and certainly in the North Burnett are on side and willing to work with us, as they have done very well throughout this whole process. So just really thank you, Councillor Potter, for the question, and that, yeah, there will certainly be more information come forward once we receive those responses. But the team are following up because at a minimum we needed 20 to 25 responses for these projects to really demonstrate demand. It wasn't so much about megalitres, it was more around demonstrating a shared demand across the network so that more than one person would actually benefit from the project. Thank you.
Councillor Hensham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And certainly not to put a negative spin on it, but the Balliol and the Blackbutt irrigators certainly be wonderful to get those up and running. Just with the Gordon Brook one, it was also noted there that the view that 3,000 megalitres of water available was too little. Now, that being said, there's so much work got to be done in that space that prior to probably that, and just want to bring this to probably the public's attention more so, that there's so much work to do there that we need to, as a council, secure more water before we start giving 3,000 megalitres away. Now, to put it in perspective, 3,000 megalitres of water takes roughly between 5 and 7 megalitres to irrigate a crop, full irrigation. If you have 100 hectares, that's 700 megs. You're talking 5 irrigators to use that 3,000 megs. And that's just a comparison. That's all I mentioned those figures for. It'd be wonderful, but at the same time, we need to make sure we shore up the town water from Burndooma Dam and our allocations there, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of work to be done in that space, and we desperately want to secure. Just because our water facilities are full, it's still as precious as it was 6 months ago at the levels they were at. So, yeah, just wonderful. I sat in with Councillor Shoemaker with the meeting on Brook. There's certainly some great interest shown there. Look, the Burnett is a salad bowl if we just had water. So anything to do with water I'm passionate about. But just there's a lot of work to do in that space with the Brook and the water. And unfortunately, 3,000 meg sounds a lot of water, but it's not in the scheme of things. So, yep, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jones, did you want to add anything?
No, Mr Mayor, I'm pretty comfortable with all that sort of stuff. Great projects, and hopefully we can get them up sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Shoemaker for concluding comments. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just further to your comments, Councillor Henson, it's a good point that you make in relation to the 3,000 megalitres. And the discussion was very much about, whilst that would make some difference, there are also other projects that should be contemplated to support, particularly from Brook through to Cumbia, basically, because we've got those rich red soils, so much opportunity. And I guess what we've really unlocked with this project is the thinking of local farmers around what they're actually choosing to plant. Recently met with Peter Hatfield at his property on... Hatfield. I got Pete Hatfield. Anyway, Mr. Hatfield, I did meet with Peter Howlett, yes, you're right, to talk about his cotton crop, and that was very exciting there in Cumbia. He basically proved many people wrong that it could be done, and a largely dry crop there in Cumbia cotton, and it's starting to look very good. I hope may he get a couple of hot days and no rain and finish off that cotton crop. But I guess the discussion that I had with Mr. Hatfield on the banks of Brook Dam was around, he's a lime producer in our region, and he actually has enormous opportunity to grow his citrus production, but he can't do that because of water. And what it proved to me driving around his farm and having a look around is there's acres of untapped country there. It's not even that, in his words, the soil's not that great. But the reality is with water, you can grow almost anything. So just talking with Peter about the opportunity to actually grow his production was pretty extraordinary there. Just a small lime farm, something that he's been working on for the last 30 years. The opportunity in the region is great, and whilst 3,000 megalitres of water may not seem like a lot, for an operator like Mr. Hatfield, it would actually double, somewhat even triple, his production. That means his temporary workforce becomes a little bit more permanent, and that means more jobs and more opportunities in our region. So he's just one example of many people we've spoken with who's actually said, hey, if I had some of that water, I could grow, I could double my production, triple my production, I could actually set a trajectory for growth, and with that, employ more people and contribute more to our local economy. And I think in terms of diversifying and discussing the future of the region, they're really important discussions to be had. So every drop counts in the South Burnett, and whilst there'll be different projects that we need to push forward and there'll be different benefits from those, I think every project is equally as important, and really do commend this recommendation to the Chamber, and thank you, Council, for your support in enabling the water conversation in the South Burnett.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 10.4 is the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grant funding at 64. General Manager O'May, if you could, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we've just included an update. It was requested just a quick update on this funding which we received. It has been approved, and we have actually received the contract documentation that we've been able to sign off now. So it's $1.6 million over the life of the grant program. Summary there based on the three projects. So employment of a what we've called the project team, a community recovery resilience officer, a economic or business recovery resilience officer and a community grants officer. So recruitment for those is basically commencing now for those 3 positions. So they will be the workhorses who drive this project, the legs on the ground. Under the program, we've also got 2 grant projects, one for social recovery and resilience and the other for the economic resilience stream. So those officers will oversee those minor grants programs. And then there are a number of identified specific projects that were put in the project plan that have been approved. So development of my community, a community information platform, the action plan to operationalise the regional development strategy, a prospectus brochures and the facade improvement scheme. I've also included the project milestones. So these were slightly different to what was put in the application. The BBRF funding was delayed in announcement, so there has been, so these were pushed back by the funding body. They were adjusted back for a couple of months. So really we're at the cusp of commencing this, we're getting PDs together now with recruitment in the coming weeks to hopefully get those officers on board to kick off for the start of next financial year. So yeah, it's just really just for council's information.
Thanks very much, General Manager O'May. It's recommended that the report, that the update be received. We have a mover, Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very excited about this opportunity for our region to have some boots on the ground in these 3 areas will be really important moving forward. I think the projects put forward are very exciting. The South Burnett Business Prospectus, South Burnett Facade Improvement Scheme, Community Platform and the Action Plan. There's some big ticket items for this council that we've discussed certainly since we began this term, and it'll be exciting to see to have some resources that can start to sink their teeth into some of those projects. Really exciting times. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to partner with local business groups, and I can see that's a key criteria for the funding and the way forward in terms of those partnerships. It's a key milestone here on the back to establish working partnerships and feedback loops and conversations, and I think that'd be really important for our council in terms of growing with this experience and really equipping our region for the future. So I think it's great to start the conversation and so excited to get started. So thank you for the report and the update.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Potter, anything to add? No? Councillor Jones? Councillor Jones? Got you there? You're all good? Yeah. Well, General Manager O'May, thank you very much for the work you've done in working with Council, your team. First of all, in securing the funding, $1.6 million is not to be sneezed at. And as Councillor Shoemaker has articulated, in doing so, to provide us with the opportunity to actually put boots on the ground, to put resources, to be able to resource the community information platform, the formulation of the action plan that will drive forward the RDS, the prospectus brochure, as Council spoken about, and of course the important facade improvement scheme across the entire region. Council has invested a significant amount of money in the KTP project, and I think we all recognise that when the construction's finished, the work won't be done. In fact, it'll just be starting, because the next phase of that is to shape up what does, if we take Kingaroy, for example, what does the future of the Kingaroy CBD look like? And there's tremendous opportunities there in terms of service-based industries, in terms of, we've talked about that foodie strip, that foodie culture, tertiary education facilities, country university centres, those things that can retain people in our region, should they be doing undergraduate or postgraduate studies, opportunities to develop and market our region broadly, particularly in terms of inland tourism. There are so many exciting opportunities right at our feet right now. I think post-COVID, it's never been a more exciting time. to be a part of the journey that the South Burnett is now going on. I think we can all feel and sense that vibe throughout. So it's perfect timing. So thank you to the councillors and to General Manager O'May for the work you've done in this. It's going to be very valuable, and we look forward to seeing that work unfold. General Manager, just in terms of the employment of those, the engagement of those 3 officers, approximate timeframe in terms of our recruitment process?
We'd expect to take these next couple of months and have them on board ready for start of next financial year. So generally that recruitment process will take 3 months from, but we should hopefully have ads out in the coming weeks, so which will give us that time frame to get those officers on board for the new financial year.
Thanks, General Manager. Okay, any further speakers? Obviously this is a wonderful initiative. So thanks again. Okay, nothing further, Councillor Shoemaker, in closing? All right, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We're up to the minutes of the South Burnett Regional Development Advisory Committee, Rdac meeting. It's at page 67, and we might go back to you. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's certainly just a record of some of the key points of discussion that were undertaken at the meeting. I did provide a pretty comprehensive report in terms of what was discussed as part of my last portfolio report. I think it's just comforting in summing up that many of the things that were discussed and identified are actually key priorities that we have looked to progress through our regional development strategy. So it's probably a good, indication that we're on the right track. It was wonderful to sit with the advisory committee and talk about how we may actually sort of progress some of these discussions. And we were talking about, in a think tank kind of environment, really challenging ourselves with a problem statement around it, such as, and I've since had conversations with some of the members. For instance, we talk about livability. So what really livability means different things for different people. And so as part of the advisory committee group, maybe we should actually have some conversations with some people who have left the region, seek their feedback if they're young professionals. We know that that's happening. So what were the reasons for that? And get a little bit more specific around what people are actually seeking out when it comes to livability. I've lived in the region all my life. I love my lifestyle here, but I recognise that for somebody new to town who is trying to meet new people, and I know Councillor Potter's done some fabulous work with the young professionals in the past, how are we connecting people? So I guess there's some of the conversations, that's just an example of some of the conversations we're hoping to have through the Regional Development Advisory Committee to really sort of put a problem statement up and then together brainstorm and spitball some ideas around what that means and bring that back to Council for consideration in the many decisions that we make here. So that's all I have to offer, I guess, Mr. Mayor. In closing, I think the most important thing that come out of the meeting from my perspective is that discussion around confidence and really being confident in who we are and what we have to offer. And I think this committee is one step in terms of how we understand and how we can position and portray our region as a growing region that has plenty of opportunity, and therefore we should be very confident about what we have to offer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have to offer at this point in time, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Councillor. So, committee, we have the report there, and it's recommended that the minutes of the Rdac meeting held on Tuesday, 22 February 2022 be received for information. We'll take that as moved by Councillor Shoemaker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Potter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd actually like to congratulate Councillor Shoemaker on getting this advisory committee up and running. I know she sort of is very passionate about this. Just a couple of questions with regards to those discussion points. There are a couple things in there, like encouraging young professionals to stay after 3 years, and the health services and things like that. So will you be inviting other people to discuss that? Because with the young professionals, encouraging them, there's actually a subgroup of the Local Level Alliance that is actually working in that space already. So if we can sort of connect you with them, that would be a really good idea. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. That's the whole purpose of the committee, is really to open up and unlock some of these conversations. So I guess in those few summary points there in terms of the way forward, the idea is to bring forward some of the key stakeholders who have input to provide, to be an active part of the conversation, and then together, I guess, come up with some recommendations or some ideas for how we may actually, I guess, address some of the problems and the challenges that we face, and try a different approach or connect people in a different way. So that's certainly the intent. It's not to be an isolated committee by itself. It's a committee to really try to bring key people to the table and try to have some of these conversations and understand the many different positions and opportunities to move forward. So no idea is a crazy idea in my opinion, and the whole purpose of this group is to just generate some ideas and some conversation that we can then feed back to council. So this was our first meeting. I really appreciate the support of State Development in delivering the meeting, and I know there'll be many more to come, and they'll take different format each time, depending on what the problem statement we're looking to address is. So thank you, Councillor Potter, for the question.
Further speakers? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 11 on the agenda are questions on notice. The first question is in relation to the purchasing of equipment from local suppliers, put by Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Shoemaker, are you happy with the response? Did you want to discuss that? Further questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question was in relation to the purchase of trucks that council, from reading the report, I understand only tends to purchase on average 4 trucks each financial year, and we require a specific bodybuilder to design, build and fit the tipping trucks that we do purchase, and that there's nobody in the region that currently has those skills or expertise. So yeah, I appreciate the response, and can see that, we'll continue to purchase our trucks through Toowoomba, Dalby and Gympie, which are our neighbouring regions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So the recommendation is that the response to the question regarding purchasing of equipment from local suppliers raised by Councillor Shoemaker be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 11.2, question on notice. You resident information pack at page 74. A question from Councillor Shoemaker again. We'll go back to you. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to see that all centres do have a new resident pack to hand out to residents. I guess it stayed with me when I was campaigning. I met a lady at the Nanango Markets who was only new to the region, and I know we've talked about this before, and she was sort of a little bit clueless as to where to go or where to start or who to talk to. And she mentioned that her former council used to issue letters to her new residents, and it was a letter from the Mayor on behalf of council welcoming them to the region. I just wondered, as part of the property transfer process, or when that sort of happens through council, I guess, is there any way to determine that is a new resident to the region, or that's just an existing resident who's moved house? And can we see in the future an opportunity to send a letter to those new residents to the region? I guess if they're a new rate payer that have a new customer card, so we might be able to identify through that way. I think it's something that it's a nice touch when people move to the region, and just sort of direct them to our visitor information centres where they can meet a local and get some of this information. Might be a good way to close out the loop, and just keen to understand whether that might be something we can take away and investigate or explore.
Yeah, certainly. Keen to hear General Manager Jarvis, General Manager O'May, responses to that. I can see you both thinking it through. It's a good question, isn't it? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I know when we moved here 2.5 years ago, we received a letter from our local member welcoming us to the area, and that was a nice touch. I think through rates, we do have the capacity when we're requested for rate searches, but it's not guaranteeing that the person purchasing the house actually will be a resident there, because we have a lot of investment properties there as well. So I was sort of trying to think that through, so I'll take that on notice. I could be wrong. I do know in a previous council, our mayor was very much against sending cards like for births of new babies or sympathy cards, because sometimes the risk is you may mistakenly miss somebody, and that upsets it. So there's risks involved in that suggestion as well. However well-meaning, I just thought I'd flag that as well, that, yeah, that's from previous experience, that was all. But I'll take that on notice about the rate searches and get back to you, councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, could we put that as a question on notice? I am keen to hear back. I think we're probably all keen to hear back as to what options are available there, General Managers. Yeah. Councillor Potter, sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm just wondering whether this is something we can work with our real estate agents on, and maybe give, when they sell a house, some real estate agents actually give a little basket or something, but if in that basket or whatever they give, there's a envelope, and in that envelope is maybe a letter from the mayor, and also maybe a token for a new residence pack at the visitor information centre of that town that they're living in. To me, that would just solve a lot of issues. If you have that done up already, give it to the real estate agents and they put it in there. When someone buys a house, it just automatically goes with the, yeah, thanks.
So you're thinking, Councillor Potter, a welcome gift pack that they could be given to every new resident that purchases and moves into the region by the real estate agents, which would include the information from council, VICs, welcoming letter.
Yeah, and so most real estate agents that I know of recently actually give a pack. When someone buys a house, they give them a little, box of chocolates and bottle of wine or something. So maybe we can actually put something in that, a letter from the mayor, and in that letter is also a voucher for them to visit the local information centre and pick up their new residence pack.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And I also note that with the $1.6 million, one of the projects is the creation of the South Burnett Community Information Platform that incorporates a community directory, a diary, and access to a My Community app, which will be very valuable as well. General Manager, within the scope of the works that will be done by those officers, would there be an opportunity in there to look at, once those officers take up their duties, to look at working on a program such as the one that Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Potter have talked about, in terms of putting together some welcome packs from council that we can give to the real estate agents that will then connect people into the VICs? We'll welcome them, connect them into the VICs, provide them with information about our region, and also information about how they can access the My Community app. Is that something that could be picked up in the scope of works by one of our new officers?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, most definitely. I think it would fit into that, and they would work with the VICs. I think also with the library. There's a lot of new residents that join up with the library, so we could actually incorporate information about those programs. So yeah, I think it would fit neatly into that. And I do like the idea of engaging with the real estate agents and those two, because you will pick up the problem with the property transfers. They can be a number of months behind at times, so you can be, someone's moved in and they've already been here for 2 months before they get the information. So yeah, right at the transfer would be a good time to be touching base with them.
So, Mr. CEO, is that something we could just simply note from today's committee meeting, that if we could have General Manager work with Councillors Shoemaker and Potter on a program there when those new officers take up for new residents through real estate agents? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Back to Councillor Potter, then we'll go to Councillor Duff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working through, I just want to add that working through the real estate agents also picks up the people that are renting, not just the people that are buying.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm very keen on this. When I was in the Visitor Information Centre the other day, I was surprised at how what the pack was in those packs. There's been, obviously, they've gone to a lot of trouble to put those packs together, but a lot of people don't know about them. And there was the lady in Mergen, she had mental health issues, and I was asked to meet with her, and her biggest concern was that she'd just come to the community and she hadn't been able to engage with anybody. She didn't know any of the community groups. She just wasn't able to get started. And I was able to get her some information and get her involved in actually the Mergen RSL sub-branch, and it turned her life around. Now she's volunteering and doing all sorts of things. So I think there is a big gap there when we get those new residents to actually understand what we have as a region, and they can be great advocates for our region when if we are welcoming. They'll say, you know, come to the South Bird because look what happened to me. I had that experience. Someone actually gave me all this information. I think it is it's a big opportunity and a missed opportunity for us. So I'm really keen to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. CEO, I think what we're hearing is that we're all very pleased to see the work that's been undertaken here by your staff in relation to production of those packs. If you could please pass on our sincere thanks to everyone in your team that was part of putting all those together. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so look, Councillor Shoemaker, you happy with the responses? Yep, so it's just recommended there that be received and noted. Take it, moved by Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Henson, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. And we've got a new question, Mr. CEO. Oh yes, so we've got the new question on notice in relation to the rate searches. Thank you, Mr. CEO. We're now up to item 12, which is CTC land transfer, and it's the officer's recommendation that council considers the confidential report listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012, CTC land transfer. The matter is considered to be confidential under section 254J-G on the basis that the discussion of this matter in an open meeting would on balance be contrary to the public interest as it deals with negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll now close and go into committee at 11:32 a.m. Thank you, Bree. Open council, do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, those in favour? Councillor Jones, yes. Carried unanimously.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm having trouble here with my microphone and cameras here.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. We'll go back online now, Bree. So we're online, back in open meeting, where it's recommended that the committee recommend to council that in accordance with Local Government Act 2009, Section 257, to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer of Council the power under Section 262(3) of the Act to negotiate and agree in principle the terms and conditions of a contract for the disposal of the land and building assets to the community organisation South Burnett CTC for future consideration and or approval by Council. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Now call the meeting to a close at 11:49 a.m. and thanks very much to everyone for your active participation today and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.